Tom Ryan, one of the plaintiffs and one of the cross-defendants in this case? I am. Where do you reside? At 140 South Grace Street. How long have you resided there? Since 47. Do you know when in 47? I think it was in March. The residence is in Portland, Maine? Right. Is that the same property as lot number 81, tract 1600? I suppose so. You are married to the plaintiff and cross-defendant Blanche Ryan? That is right. When were you married? In 45. She resides at this residence with you? She does. Is she also known as Blanche F. Ryan? No. What was her maiden name? Mills, Blanche Mills. Do you know what her middle name was? Sophie. You don't know of her ever having been known as Blanche F. Ryan? No, not to my knowledge. We had anticipated Mrs. Ryan's deposition today. I understand from your counsel that she is ill. She is very ill. Where is she? At home. Does she require medical attention? Yes. What is the nature of her illness, if you know? Well, she has been ill for months now. What is the nature of her illness? Well, she is supposed to go through an operation. She is holding back gallstones and has been under the doctor's care for months. Did she see the doctor today or yesterday? I don't know. Is she confined to her house? Well, she is not supposed to do any walking or any going out. Mr. Ryan, have you ever had your deposition taken before? No, sir. Well, then, I will explain to you generally what the nature of this proceeding is so that you will understand fully what is transpiring. You have filed an action along with some co-plaintiffs against Samuel S. Burns and others as defendants. Samuel S. Burns and others as cross-complainants have filed a cross-complaint against you and others as cross-defendants. This deposition is part of those proceedings, is it not? Yes. You have been sworn by the reporter here that you will, in these proceedings, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Accordingly, you are under oath as though you were actually in a courtroom testifying in this case. Yes. When the deposition is concluded, you will be given an opportunity to read it and sign it. At the time you read it and sign it, you will have an opportunity, if you desire to do so, to change your answers if you desire to change them, but should you change them, then, upon the trial of this case, as we, as attorneys for the defendants and cross-complainants, will have the right to cross-examine you as to why the changes were made. I want you to be fully aware, if you will, please, that all of the answers that you are giving to questions are being responded by this gentleman to my left, who is a court reporter, and that your answers are required to be true, as though they were given in court, and that any untruths that may be stated would constitute perjury just as though they had been given in court under oath. Do you understand everything I have said so far? Yes. Directing your attention to a date on or about March 24th, 1951, will you state whether or not at that time you were associated with Mr. Greg Parks and Gordon T. Black as partners in a business known as Associated Builders, a co-partnership? I was. Will you state whether or not your association with those gentlemen was pursuant to some written agreement or not? Pursuant to a written agreement. Do you have in your possession that written agreement? By that I don't mean in your immediate possession today, but do you have such an agreement in your possession or under your custody or control? Yes, I have. Will you state whether or not any persons other than Mr. Parks and Mr. Black were associated with you in that partnership, Associated Builders? No, that is all. Is it not a fact that at that time, the date to which I directed your attention on or about January 24th, 1951, or subsequent thereto, persons in addition to Mr. Parks and Mr. Black became interested in Associated Builders as partners? No one else ever became interested as partners in Associated Builders. State whether or not Mr. Albert Katz at any time was a partner in Associated Builders. Definitely not. State whether or not Mr. Dan Mills was ever a partner in Associated Builders. At no time. State whether or not you have ever been associated with either Mr. Katz or Mr. Mills in the business of building. Not with Mr. Mills, and only as an employee of Mr. Katz. When were you employed by Mr. Katz? Well, as a super on a job. When? Well, there was no definite date. When were you first employed by him? I couldn't place the exact date. What was the approximate date? Well, it was sometime in 1950. The early or the latter part of 1950? Oh, probably the middle of 1950 or someplace around there. And when were you last employed by Mr. Katz? Well, I was never directly employed all the way through. It was just one deal. Well, you stated earlier that you had been employed, that your association with Mr. Katz was only as an employee. I take it that answer is true? That is right. When were you last employed by Mr. Katz as an employee? Are you still in his employ? Well, $185.